Last time we talked about the 900,000-year-old bottleneck, the period where our ancestors nearly vanished, leaving almost nothing behind except a scar in our DNA, and maybe the discovery of fire. That population eventually recovered, and around 800,000 years ago, it started to split. One of those branches became us, Homo sapiens, another became the Neanderthals, who you've probably heard of, and a third branch became something else, something we didn't even know existed until 2008, something we've never seen a face, a skeleton, or even a complete skull of. We know it by a single bone, from a finger. It's 2010 in a genetics lab in Leipzig, Germany. It's 2010 in a genetics lab in Leipzig, Germany. Researchers have just finished sequencing DNA from a small bone fragment found 2 years earlier in a cave in Siberia. It's a piece of a pinky finger from a child. They expected it to come back as Neanderthal, maybe early modern human. Either would have been interesting, but not surprising. The results come back, and the DNA doesn't match either one. It's not Neanderthal, it's not us, it's something that branched off the human family tree at some point in the deep past and then disappeared so completely that until this exact moment, nobody on Earth knew it had ever existed. They named it after the cave where it was found, Denisova. The Denisova Cave sits in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, a remote, cold region near where Russia, Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan all meet. It's not an obvious place to find a missing branch of humanity, but it turns out to be one of the most important caves on Earth because, as we'd later learn, it was home to multiple human species at different points across more than 200,000 years. Neanderthals lived there, modern humans lived there, and so did this. In 2008, those archaeologists found that finger bone fragment, barely larger than a grain of rice, belonging to the aforementioned juvenile. They didn't know what it was at the time, but it got cataloged, sequenced, and that's when everything changed. Since then, here's the complete inventory of confirmed Denisovan fossil material worldwide. The finger bone, a handful of teeth, a toe bone, a few skull fragments, and one partial jawbone, not found in Siberia, but on the Tibetan plateau, identified in 2019. Spunky, please stop scratching my chair. That is my cat. That's it. That's all of them. That's all the bones. That is the entire physical record of an entire human species. You could fit all of it in your hand, with some room left over. And yet we know more about Denisovans in some ways than we know about species with hundreds of fossils, because almost everything we know doesn't come from the bones. It comes from the DNA, and the DNA is inside of us. I was inside of your mother. You are my DNA. Welcome to the family, regular son. Sorry I ran away for milk. Was really thirsty, didn't come back. Here's the problem scientists ran into almost immediately. How do you define a species? How do you even describe what it looked like, how it lived, and what it was? From a finger bone, some teeth, and a jaw. For years, Denisovans existed almost as a kind of genetic ghost. We knew their DNA was real. We knew it was distinct, but we had no face to put to it, no body plan. Some researchers even debated whether Denisovans should be considered a separate species at all, or just a regional population of something else entirely. Then in 2018, something happened that nobody was expecting. Researchers were analyzing another bone fragment from Denisova Cave, cataloged as Denisova 11, nicknamed Denny, belonging to a girl who died around 13 years old, roughly 90,000 years ago. They sequenced her genome expecting to confirm she was Denisovan or Neanderthal, or possibly modern human. Instead, they found something split almost exactly down the middle. Denny's mother was Neanderthal, and her father was Denisovan. She was a first-generation hybrid, not a descendant of interbreeding generations, an actual child of two different human species found directly in the fossil record, the first and, to this day, only individual like this ever discovered. Think about what that means. Her father's population and her mother's population, two distinct human lineages, separated by hundreds of thousands of years of separate evolution, were close enough in the same place at the same time and had a child together. And that child grew up in a cave in Siberia 90,000 years ago. Man, she was living lavishly in that Siberian cave. I wish I had a Siberian cave with my own pet bear. That's probably a thing. I'm gonna go do that. Screw YouTube, screw this. I'm done with the video. I'm gonna go get a cave. I'm just gonna do that. This single discovery did two things at once. It proved beyond doubt that Denisovans were real, distinct, and genetically separable from Neanderthals, settling the species debate. And it proved that these separate species weren't living in isolated bubbles. They were meeting repeatedly across vast stretches of time and geography. So now the question became, if Denisovans and Neanderthals and modern humans were all interbreeding, where exactly were Denisovans actually living? Because the only fossils we had came from one cold cave in Siberia and one jawbone in Tibet. It's not a lot of territory for a species that left genetic traces in people thousands of miles away. Here's where the story gets really cool. When researchers started looking for Denisovan DNA in populations, they didn't find it concentrated near Siberia. They found it scattered across some of the most geographically distant places on Earth. Modern Tibetans carry Denisovan DNA, including a specific gene called EPAS1, which helps regulate the body's response to low oxygen. People with this gene variant can live at high altitude above 4,000 meters without the health problems that affect most humans at that elevation. It's one of the clearest examples ever found of a gene inherited from an extinct human species directly helping a living population survive in an extreme environment today. But the largest concentrations of Denisovan ancestry aren't in Siberia or Tibet at all. They're in Melanesia and among Aboriginal Australian populations, where some individuals carry up to 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA. That's thousands of kilometers, and for Americans, a little less thousands of miles, from the Altai Mountains across some of the most challenging terrain and open ocean crossings on the planet. For Denisovan DNA to end up there, Denisovans themselves or their direct descendants must have lived across an enormous range, possibly from cold Siberian mountains to the Tibetan Plateau to tropical Southeast Asia. And in 2022, that prediction got a stunning piece of physical evidence, a tooth found in a cave in Laos. Tom Nhu Hao 2, also called Cobra Cave, was identified as Denisovan, a tropical environment thousands of kilometers from Siberia with completely different climate demands. So picture the actual scope of this species, adapted to frozen mountain caves, adapted to the thin air of the Tibetan Plateau, adapted to humid tropical forests, one of the most environmentally adaptable human populations that ever existed. And until 2008, we had no idea it existed at all. We've never seen what a Denisovan looked like. We don't have a face. We don't have a skeleton. We may never find one. But if you're of Melanesian, Aboriginal Australian, or Tibetan descent in particular, there's a real chance that some small part of how your body works right now is from them. A species we've never seen. Now that's the end of this series, and honestly, thank you guys for being here and sticking with me with something that's this deep. It's a 3-parter. I hope you guys enjoyed it a lot. Now, if you want more of this kind of thing, the best way to tell me is to just hit subscribe and let me know in the comments. And spoiler alert, the thing I've got planned for the next video, if you don't know who Salmonella Academy is, you should go check him out. He's really cool, and he did a video on Diogenes, and I'm gonna do a video on Diogenes. It's gonna be a funny one, so hope to see you guys there. Bye.